Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 12 of the show that you all are here to see, Gabbin with Oof. I am your host, Oofman, and this is an awesome and special episode of Gabbin with Oof because I am joined by an awesome guest. Here he is, the one and only Papa Gino. Gino, thank you so much for joining me on this awesome episode number 12. How are you, my good friend?
I'm doing well, doing well. We're going to be talking about what we're going to be talking about. So maybe my feelings of being well might deviate, but for right now, having a good morning, went to the gym, feeling ready to have this discussion with you. And thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. Yeah, so I'm going to stroke Gino's ego right now. Gino is one of the moderators on NoDQ. Shout out to NoDQ, Aaron, and the crew over there. Thank you so much for having me there on the show, Aaron, and introducing me to the awesomeness of Gino. Why Gino's here is Gino and I, we think a lot alike. And what I do adore about Gino is when he rants, and I sit down and I listen when either I'm on the review or I'm an audience member participating in the chat. When Gino goes on his rants, we see the green come out and he has a lot to say. So, Gino, I'm really excited to hear your opinion on this. So, what are we going to gab about? Well, we're going to gab about the news that hit last weekend. The big news that Netflix has acquired Warner Brothers Discovery for an amazing $83 billion. That is a billion with a B. Now, audience, you're probably wondering, well, what do you two got to say with that? Well, it affects us a lot because Gino and I are both movie buffs, number one. But as you know, if you've been seeing the NoDQ review and NoDQ.com with their videos on us, is it affects us as wrestling fans a little bit, which we'll get into in a short minute. So let me give you a quick little recap history of what has happened. So earlier in the year, it was announced that Warner Brothers Discovery was up for sale and they were going to split each other into two companies, the movie production and then the television stuff and all that. And the front runners were Netflix and Paramount Plus. Everybody in the world thought it was going to be Paramount Plus. I did as well. And so the whole thing was there. Warner Brothers Discovery was going to be up for sale. Now, why it affects us is, like I mentioned earlier, as two wrestling nerds, we both do watch and we talk about wrestling, especially me with AEW. And so the whole future of AEW was at stake. So on that note, I'll pass up a baton to Gino. So Gino, your thoughts on when you heard the news that Warner Brothers Discovery was up for sale?
Okay. Thank you very much, Oofman. I appreciate it. You're absolutely right. So this happened a little bit earlier in the year. I actually am a stockholder for Warner Brothers Discovery. I own 100 shares. So I was privy to the sale and some of the inner workings and do have a minor say in the completion of any potential sale to a potential bidder because as the stockholders have to approve whatever they decide. Now, for me, when I heard that they was going to be sold, I was wondering first, well, how does this affect my stock price? What's going to happen with that? As soon as the news came out that they were up for sale, it essentially skyrocketed, which made me very happy. But then the reality of, well, what does this mean for the future of, I don't just buy into Warner Brothers to make money. I buy into them because I'm a big fan of DC. I'm a fan of the wrestling content. I'm a fan of the movies that they make. I'm a fan of the 100-year history that they have as a studio. And I personally wanted it to be bought by Apple. That was kind of my like wish list. It was going to be Apple, and I didn't really want anybody else. Obviously, they kind of bowed out pretty early in that. But the reason why I wanted Apple is because they already work with Warner Brothers in making things like Ted Lasso, which is fantastic, Shrinking, which is fantastic. Other things that are on Apple TV, they collaborated with Warner Brothers to make the F1 movie with Brad Pitt that released in theaters. So, and that was also awesome. So when you have a working relationship already and what seems to be a commitment to theatrical releases, I thought that would have been the best fit. But then, like you said, Paramount, with their new ownership from Skydance and the Ellisons, they were pushing very hard. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little later. The embarrassing letter that their lawyers put out when they found out that they were probably going to be losing out to Netflix. But we will get to that. So my initial thoughts were, how does this affect my stock price? how does this affect the IPs and the theatrical experience with Warner Brothers?
All right, so wrinkle in the brain. I did not know you own stock, but hey, that's cool. So yeah, so one you are absolutely right to be concerned and all that, and just really curious, I would say. So the timeline went on, and then literally this past Friday morning, we all of us again, all us wrestling nerds, all everybody in the world woke up to hear the news that it was Netflix that won the bidding war of 2025, I guess you want to call it, and they have now will eventually again because this all does take time will eventually own Warner Brothers Discovery if everything goes well. And they're saying it'll take about a year and all that to finally
Mhm.
make the sale. It has to DOG has to go it. The president has to approve it. So now this is where the discussion comes about. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? So personally speaking, it could go either way. And again, I've been like we talked about earlier, I've been seeing other people's reports about it, and it feels like the needle is in the middle, heading maybe towards probably a bad thing versus a good thing. So, what are the good things about it? Well, number one, it'll be all consolidated under Netflix. Maybe that eliminates what I'm again positive things that I'm reading is maybe that for people who are already consuming a lot of money purchasing apps and all that, maybe now it's like, all right, all these movies in one solid place, one solid price. Cool. Because again, I have HBO Max, I do have Netflix, I do have other streaming services, and yeah, I'm a purchaser of the lower tier and all that. But maybe this is a good thing of consolidating everybody all together. So that's right there the good news about it. Now, perhaps the bad news about it, which I think we'll probably rant on more, is like you said, the future of movies. Where a report I read from Movie Phone, I think it was, or some movie website was Netflix may now limit theater runs, and that is disappointing because let's say a movie debuts, for instance, let's take The Batman comes out in 2027, and they release it, and then who's to say Netflix goes, all right, 2 weeks is enough. Let's put it on streaming. And I miss out on, let's say I can't go because of work or just life, and I can't go to the theater to see it. And then, all right, it's coming to my house. And the bonus is I don't pay for Netflix. Thank you, T-Mobile. So that's a positive sign for me. So whatever could Netflix jack up their prices? All right, I don't have to pay for it. So I'm winning there. But I think, like you said, I think the overall part aspect is the theater experience. I mentioned earlier, and for those that watch the channel, I'm a huge Avengers fan. I loved going to the movies to see almost every MCU movie. What's to say that Disney will probably bite the same idea from Netflix? They'll be like, wait a minute, if Netflix is making dough on people staying home, so will we. So now Disney Plus decides to steal that idea. We mentioned Paramount Plus earlier, movies coming out of there. You mentioned Apple. Apple's got into the movie business. What if they were going to release a movie into theaters, which they're trying to do? Netflix did release some limited run movies into theaters, but then now they can automatically go into streaming. So I think that's going to be a lost art. Or I remember showing my age back in the 90s. Me and my shout out to my good best friend Keith. From 95 to 99 in the summer, on all those summers, if it was a movie debuting, we were into theaters. Again, we're talking 1995 ticket prices, so you can imagine the differences. But it was a debut movie, we were there. It felt like every Friday night, every Saturday night, we went to the local theater in our hometown, and we went to the theater, and we afterwards we would go get something to eat, and we would discuss the movies. And I mean, YouTube wasn't created then. Had it was, we'd probably be in that show doing that ourselves. But that was fun. And then hanging out with your friends, and then relationships come on, or your family. I remember taking my parents to go see The Passion of the Christ in the theaters, and we were all into it. So all that I thought of all of that while reading the news with Netflix, but especially that little tidbit of the movie experience may go away. And I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bummed because what is going to happen to theaters? That experience of going out, whatever, with your friends, family, loved ones, whatever. That experience of going to see the movie, checking it out, buying your popcorn and your soda, and just checking out the experience. People are like, "Well, I've been seeing on social media. Well, I have surround sound in my house. I don't need to go to the theater." Yeah, but do you have I don't know, 100-inch screen at home and all that? It's that feeling of united again as fans. So we mentioned that we're wrestling fans. I understand WWE's ticket prices are going up, so a bunch of fans are upset. They may not be able to afford to go to WWE shows. Sure, they'll stay at home and watch it on ESPN or on Netflix in international places. And you can see it with your friends at home and all that. But imagine you want to be at that stadium. You want to be in that stadium with 40, 30, 20,000 people, or even just a Raw or SmackDown. And even AEW with Dynamite, just be in the arena to lose your mind with fellow wrestling fans. That's one of the sad things I think may happen. Again, just we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if Netflix is going to get the okay from the approval, but it's just this fear that is out there. And I feel like it's going to be a lost art of going to the theater. So, Gino, on that note, again, like I said, you're a movie buff as well. Your feelings on what if Netflix decides to either start limited theater runs and then just go screw it. We're just going to go straight to streaming and all that. Your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Oofman. You mentioned a lot there, so I want to do my best to try and address those points that you brought up. The first thing I'm going to start off with saying, I'm going to try to stay positive until my judgment gets the better of me. But for the positives, are as far as not trashing on the Netflix aspect of this, the movie theater industry in and of itself has been in decline. I mean, yeah, since the pandemic for sure, which is not the pandemic, not their fault. People then have been conditioned to feel comfortable watching their content at their house. And the movie theater industry and other studios, because Netflix isn't a movie theater studio. It's not. And they make movies, but they're not a studio. They're a
Right.
television provider. But
Yeah.
people like NBC Universal, people like Paramount before the Ellisons bought, we'll see what happens. It usually takes about 2 or 3 years for new ownership's fingerprints to be on the what we're getting in the theaters or what we're getting for content. But we've got movies like Furiosa and Fall Guy. They're in theaters for 2 weeks and then they're pulled off streaming. And those are different studios doing that, right? So basically, the audience has been conditioned to say, well, I'll just wait for it to come out on streaming. And that's not even a Netflix thing. Netflix is just now dipping their toes into theatrical releases, but not because of the money that can be made, but because they want to be Oscar eligible for their movies. And this recent one, K-pop Demon Hunter, they wanted to be eligible for the British Oscars, the BAFTAs, and they're not eligible because it released on streaming first, right? And that, I've never seen it, but the kids that I work with, they're all about the songs and those types of things. So it used to be, obviously the movie theater industry making things, it's a business. You want to make money, but winning awards is like the second best thing you can do, right? The problem then becomes is, again, people are used to staying home, watching and waiting. Oh, something's releasing in theaters that I'm interested in. I'll just wait for it to come on to streaming. And the evidence and all of the data shows that if a movie releases in theaters first, it does better when it does hit the streaming platform, no matter if it's 2 weeks, whether it's, like you said, in the 90s, there was a 90-day theatrical window. And it's been shortened in the past or in recent years to like 45-day window and 30-day window. And then there's some movies that they're doing it within 2 weeks. And they do that because they don't want to spend the money to market again. They want the trailers. They want the come see it in theaters, blah, 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 blah. They want all of those things to still be fresh in people's brains so they don't have to then promote now on HBOMax. Like with Superman, didn't do that. Superman marketed it properly, say go to the theater. And then once it was coming on HBOMax, they were like, now streaming on HBOMax, one of the highest rated whatever. They were using that. So the marketing aspect of that, it was like they're trying to cut corners. And if the movie theater industry dies, the tombstone will read death by suicide, because a lot of this stuff is self-inflicted. Now, my favorite movie-going theater is AMC theaters, and they are also contributing to the destruction of the movie theater experience because of recently they've changed it a little bit, but we're talking 20 to 30 minutes of previews, commercials for what we've already paid to be there. They're giving us commercials for AMC theaters when we're there. And I heard this put very eloquently from the YouTuber that I like to watch, the movie pun I like to watch. He said, showing me an ad for something that I'm already doing is like being in the middle of hooking up with a girl and then trying to convince her to look at your Tinder profile. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You're already there. But they've started to say, okay, here's the showtime, but the movie starts 25 to 30 minutes after. So there's that. And they're starting to make some consumer friendly choices and options. Like, they raised the price of their AMC A-list, which allows you to see 3 movies a week for the price of essentially 2 tickets. So you go more than twice a month and you're already paying for itself. And they actually allowed you to see a 4th one. So they're making some consumer friendly choices. They're doing a popcorn pass, which could save you hundreds of dollars a year if you go to the movies often. At a certain time, like 2 years ago, they were trying to find a way to get more money out of the fewer people that are coming into their doors, which is one way to do business. The other way to do business is to entice more people to come through your doors. So all of that to say is this isn't an exclusively Netflix concern, but Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix, he has been making moves to convince people not to go out to the theaters. He wants you to stay home and watch it on Netflix. The issue with that is, and you mentioned Disney, and I'll transition over to that now. I don't think that Disney would ever do we have Avengers, we have Spider-Man, we have Avatar. Like, those movies will always be going to theaters first. Number one, because they cost so much money to make. And the only way a movie can make that kind of money, it's not on $15, $20, $35 monthly subscription fees. It's not. You want to make $2 billion, $1 billion, and that's not profit. That's, total box office, and then the profit gets split out to the theater. About a third goes to the theater, or what have you, and based on what you spent for making it and marketing, however you want to look at it. So I do think that Disney knows, because they had the #1 streamed movie of the year like 5 years in a row. And that was the first Moana, the animated Moana. And then they decided to move the TV show that they were going to make about Moana into the theaters and call it Moana 2. And that also made $1 billion. So Disney, with Bob Iger at the helm again, now that Bob Paycheck Chapek is gone, thank goodness. But you're starting to see the ramifications of the leadership that knows what they're doing. And you said the theater experience. Yes, there's nothing like going to the theater and being around maybe you're full, maybe you're not full, but every single different person, different demographic of type of person, age, race, income, preferences, political views, doesn't matter. When we go into the theater, we're all there sharing an experience together. You've got some people maybe laughing in the back at what's happening, makes you kind of want to laugh. You got a horror movie, you got people scared, you're sharing these experiences. And that is something that isn't had watching you by yourself, or you and a couple buddies, or you and your partner, or whatever, on your couch or in your bed on the streaming platforms. So I haven't even gotten into my concern with Netflix about them taking over Warner Brothers. I do have some thoughts about what could go good. It's going to hurt me a little bit to try and find those, but I do have the idea that, Netflix in and of itself isn't a movie making studio. So them acquiring this property, don't listen to the chatter online about saying this is monopolization and blah, 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 blah. Like, the federal government should approve this. The only reason they wouldn't would be because potential relationships with the owner of Paramount, which I mentioned at the start of the video. They said the quiet part out loud in their lawyer's press release on Thursday before Netflix was announced as the buyer, because they obviously knew that they were losing out, and they were complaining about, you're not making a fiduciary responsibility. They're bribing you by saying they're going to keep your staff intact, and don't make us use our connections to the president to not allow that sale, which is going to get them sued out the wazoo if that happens. So I really hope that doesn't happen. It would be more of a monopoly for an already current movie studio to absorb another movie studio. So that's kind of where the positive is I see with Netflix. But on the whole, you have to believe the things that Ted Sarandos is saying. he has shown time and time again that he'll talk out of one side of his mouth and then do something completely different. So if he's saying, yes, we're going to shorten the theatrical window, or yes, we're going to let Warner Brothers operate as its own studio. We're going to have James Gunn staying on, Abdi and DeLuca, who've been having a winning streak for the ages this year, a record 7 or 6 films in a row that opened to over $40 million. And these types of things that you want to see, right? Yeah, $40 million isn't the most money in the world. I mean, it's a lot of money. Most movies would kill to have that. But you want to keep their pledge to keep this leadership shows me that maybe they want that to add to their business. And they also mentioned that the HBO Max is going to be its own standalone thing, kind of like Disney has Hulu, but you might have an option to access HBO Max through Netflix. So theoretically, the Batman 2, Man of Tomorrow, Supergirl, all those things will be going to an HBO Max, House of the Dragon, things like that. You said it's going to be about a year plus, and Warner Brothers has to split the company. Netflix doesn't want CNN, TBS, TNT, any of the television stuff. They want the movie side of things. So there are some positives, there are some negatives, but I'm curious to see what you think of hearing what I'm saying, if that changes your thought process on this stuff a little bit. And we'll obviously get to how that affects maybe wrestling and our big concerns with that moving forward.
Well, yeah, again, I completely agree with what you say. And you hope that whatever these little announcements that we're hearing, but again, like I said, it's just preliminary with Netflix winning right now. And like you said, it was said that Paramount Plus, after they got word, I think before the word became official that Netflix was basically going to win, they were ready to counter it. So again, right now we only know what we know, which is that Netflix is the front runner. Everybody's saying they won, but like you just mentioned earlier, Paramount Plus is ready to fight it. And I just feel like I think, just again, just my opinion, that I think it would be better off with Paramount Plus, with that area. With Netflix, it's just interesting how they would absorb everything. And like you said, yeah, Netflix does not care about the news station about it. They want everything's going to Netflix. That's the animation of Warner Brothers, the movies, DC is going there, even the games and all that, but not the channels and all that. So yeah, like I said, Netflix is not a production company, so to speak. They're not a movie business making movies, so to speak. They're not. They're an app. They're a service. And again, I'm old enough to remember how Netflix killed poor old Blockbuster because Netflix started the DVDs in the mail, and I was guilty of that. I bought the subscription. It was cool. I'd go on the Netflix website and be like, "Oh, here's a movie. All right." A day or two later, there it is in my mailbox. And I used to, again, showing my age, used to love to go to Blockbuster just to feel there, go see what movies are out there, what video games are there, buy some candy and all that. And little did I realize that, all right, here comes this brand new idea of Netflix, and then they kind of overtook poor old Blockbuster. Blockbuster tried to do streaming service as well, and they fell on their face. Poor Blockbuster, R.I.P. to them. So it's just, I guess, it's just the changing of the guard of how we just view things. So on that note, again, another reason why, again, I'm not too concerned, but you can't really sit here and go and twiddle your thumbs about it on the wrestling aspect of it, where, like you mentioned earlier, Netflix is not interested in the channels and all that, but they are going to get HBO Max. And we wrestling fans know that AEW does show Dynamite on HBO Max. And we are all aware that Netflix is in bed with WWE. Now, Netflix does not own WWE. They're partners right now. We know that TKO owns WWE. But again, we've seen in the past how petty WWE has been against AEW. One of the things for the biggest one I could think of is All In a couple months ago. They put the WrestlePalooza on the same exact time. Tony Khan had to move it up. He didn't complain because the show was earlier. I didn't complain. The show was earlier. It was done by 8 o'clock. Oh, I have a nightlife again. But we know how petty WWE can be. So on that note, I personally, as of right now, as of the 7th of December, as we're recording this, again, a whole year is later for the merger to become real and all that. Personally, I don't think AEW will be affected that much. The only thing I can see is Tony Khan has been on interviews saying that he's friends with everybody on Warner Brothers Discovery board and all that, which is great. But who is to say that Netflix brings in their own people, will they replace the CEO, the COOs of Warner Brothers? And or will Netflix themselves be like, all right, we got WWE, they're doing great numbers for Raw and the pay-per-views, and then they're going to look at Dynamite and be like, all right, these numbers aren't that good. Will they remove AEW from Warner Brothers Discovery? Tony Khan said, I think their contract is till 2027, so he's safe for now. But again, this deal with Netflix, this agreement will go into next year, and then will Paramount Plus dive in there? So everything's in the air. So that is the question. What will happen to AEW? Again, the market is very slim on this. WWE is in business with everybody. So we mentioned Netflix. That's where Raw and the pay-per-views are. They're in business with ESPN now with their pay-per-views in the United States. They are with the CW app for NXT, I believe. They're still with Peacock for Saturday night's main event. Sore subject for you for next weekend. I'm aware we won't talk about that. And so all of these streams that WWE is in connection with, it's like, what's that going to leave AEW? Now, again, personally speaking, that they did that, I think, on purpose to mess with AEW. They're in this business relationship now with NXT. I mean, not NXT, TNA. TNA now is going to the AMC. All right, that's cool. So WWE has their fingers dipped everywhere. Where if for some reason, if AEW does get quote unquote removed from HBO Max, where are they going to go? What streaming service is out there that's popular? What channel is out there is that's popular? But most importantly, what entity is out there that WWE does not have their hands in? They're with A&E too, with their biographies and all that. So all of these fingers that WWE is in, poor AEW. If Netflix decides like, all right, we got WWE on our shows already, we really don't want two wrestling entities. Or again, let's keep it real, the ratings have not been well for AEW. Maybe someone on Netflix board goes, let's just get rid of this wrestling entity. So the question is, again, we're going with the big word of the 2-letter word of well, just your opinion, Gino, what do you see if it looks like the tide is against AEW if this merger does come around? Could you see WWE's influence, or again, I would like to use the word pettiness, go to Netflix and be like, get rid of these guys? So just overall, what do you see the future of AEW? Again, if this merger does happen and once the contract's over in 2027, do you see AEW staying? Do you see them going somewhere else? Just overall, what do you see as their potential future? And again, it's just an opinion because we both don't know. We're just spatting out what we feel, what we're seeing, and all that.
Absolutely. Right now, a lot of this is speculation. And heck, even the stuff that's been released by Netflix on their press release is still up in the air. They could always just tell us what we want to hear and then wah ha 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 and do whatever they want afterwards. As far as Netflix winning, they have won the rights to have exclusive talks with Warner Brothers, right? So they basically they offered the bid cash, mind you, which is a lot of cash. And they offered about $2 more a share than Paramount did. And Paramount just spent a crap ton of money, or Skydance rather, to buy Paramount. And honestly, I believe that they should be focusing on that. They also got the UFC deal, which is TKO Endeavor, which is the umbrella company for WWE, as you mentioned. So they're going to be giving pay-per-views for no extra charge. That, I think, is consumer friendly. Period. I would love to see something like that with whatever happens with AEW to be happening down the line. Now, to people like you and Noah, their pay-per-views would probably be shorter because they wouldn't feel like needing to give people $50, $60, $70, $40, whatever. If you have Max, their money's worth, kind of like how WWE is doing relatively shorter premium live events, but we're not paying really any extra unless you're a sucker and you bought the ESPN app instead of getting a VPN when you already have Netflix. But I digress. Now, you mentioned that 2027 is the deal. It would be up with AEW with their Warner Brothers Discovery packaging. Now, this deal with Netflix buying Warner Brothers won't happen until it won't come into fruition for a little bit over a year. So that'll bring us right up to the end of 2026, potentially 2027. So theoretically, the Netflix would own Warner Brothers right, depending on what part of 2027 the AEW contract runs out. Theoretically, though, it could happen simultaneously. Netflix gets Warner Brothers, and then the time to re-up the deal is there. Now, if WWE, as we know in the past, they've put things in their television contracts to not have competing companies also on the same channel, right? So whether they're with USA, with Fox, with who knows how they deal that with Netflix, but in the past they have wanted to be the exclusive wrestling provider with whoever owns their TV rights. Now, I don't know that they could have that in. If it's not in the contract now, they're just going to have to suck it up if AEW goes on to Netflix as well. With Netflix, their idea obviously is they want to make money, but they're using analytic content creation numbers versus like making actual good content, right? They might make one good movie for every 50 bad movies that they make. And they know that if we start a movie off this way, it'll keep a viewer engaged, right? At the end of the day, Netflix makes their money by bringing new subscribers in and retaining their old subscribers. So content, never going to be a bad thing. I cannot, in my wildest imagination, believe that Netflix would cut out the deal. Maybe they won't re-sign for AEW, but they if they know wrestling fans are coming to their stream platform for their content, they're going to want to continue to give content every day. You have to come back Monday. You have to come back, obviously Tuesday is with CW and whatever. We'll see how that goes. You have to come back Wednesday. You have to come back Friday. So now they got you for 3 nights a week. I mean, if you don't have the VPN in America, then you're watching SmackDown on cable, USA, whatever. But I do have the VPN, so I'm getting the premium live events, I'm getting SmackDown, and I'm getting Netflix or Raw all on Netflix without having to pay any extra money other than the VPN cost, which is incredibly inexpensive compared to potentially $30 extra a month on top of the other streamers that we have. Suffice it to say, I don't think they would renew. I think that WWE might be like, okay, we understand you have the contract. You're absorbed. When you buy a company, you take on all of their contracts. And if you want to get out of those contracts, you have to pay a premium to do that. So if they wanted to get rid of David Zaslav, the current head of Warner Brothers Discovery, who after AT&T sold them, the fact that Warner Brothers is still a company right now, and it was a big risk for me because I was buying it right after they hired James Gunn for my stock. The fact that their company even exists right now is nothing short of a spectacular miracle from David Zaslav. He's canceling movies that he doesn't think are going to make any money, like Batgirl as tax write-offs. He's not releasing movies like AMC or Acme versus Coyote, which I want to see, starring John Cena. He's making these decisions. He's reducing redundancy. At the time he bought it, you had HBO, you had HBO Now, HBO Go, HBO. There was 3 different ways to watch it. It made no sense. That was he absorbed that. Obviously, some people had to lose their jobs, but you can't have 2 people running streaming platforms when you only want one streaming platform. That's just kind of how it goes. And we talked about the run theatrically that they had this year. And you mentioned the pandemic, and releasing movies during the pandemic was, it made sense to put them straight on your streamers, but we called that day and date. Sometimes they would be in the theater at the same time and day as they were in the streamer, and they ruined a lot of relationships. They lost Christopher Nolan because of that. Now he's over at Universal making almost $1 billion movies with biopics, and now he's doing the Odyssey. As a Warner Brothers Discovery stockholder, I would have loved for the Odyssey to potentially have been coming out on a Warner Brothers release and all of those types of things. Disney had the same issue where they had to pay Scarlett Johansson a crap ton of money in a lawsuit because they promised her a cut of the theatrical release and they didn't put the Black Widow movie in theaters. So that's another tie into Marvel. So all these companies are learning that, if we're spending $100 million to make a movie, we're not going to make that back. $100 million worth of new customers aren't coming to your platform to watch that movie. So that's where that comes into play. Now, how this all relates to the AEW and what might happen with them, I think that it would be great if Netflix did re-sign them. I think it would make sense because they just want all the wrestling content. We've seen the history of them trying to dive into live sports, the boxing, the Christmas Day football games. I mean, say what you want about their issues with the overloaded servers and whatever. I mean, heck, they even had their servers overloaded during a Love is Blind live reunion special. So
Oh, right. Yeah.
they've got that figured out, hopefully. But they want more live content. That's where these streamers are going, because really the only reason to have cable, if it's not like provided to you with your internet, and the only reason to watch cable is for live sports and live programming, like whether it's
Basically.
the Oscars or the NFL or NBA or whatever. And then they're starting to, then you're seeing these contracts. The NBA just signed with NBC. You've got football's, it's not consumer friendly though.
Football is everywhere. Name
But
it.
you can
They're
have,
signed with them.
for real, you got Prime, NBC, Paramount, you've got ESPN. Fox doesn't have their own streaming service. So, and you'd think they would be on on Disney since the Disney Fox merger, but this is very apropos because Disney didn't want Fox News. They didn't want all the television channels that Fox had, right?
Yeah,
So
they just wanted the
only want to
entertainment stuff.
provide.
Yeah.
Exactly. So everybody's reading the tea leaves and the writing on the wall that the television and watching television non-demand is going to become archaic sooner rather than later. I know everybody's talking about, well, we're basically moving to a cable model anyway when you're paying the same amount to have all these streaming services. The difference is you're not locked into a 17,000 year contract and getting a million things that you don't want to watch. And then on top of that, being subject to content you don't want to see. So at least with the on-demand, and you mentioned you have the lower tier, which is the ad tiers of everything.
Yeah.
And they're raising their non-commercial prices pretty much what seems like through the roof. I would sit here and argue that $30, $35, even $40 a month for Netflix, as it currently stands, is still a good value with what you have on there and the content that they keep putting on there. Whether it's good or whether it's bad, there's a lot of stuff you can watch, right? I just started Spartacus. It's on Netflix. That's 4 seasons, hour-long episodes, whatever. I'm going to have the opportunity to watch that. If Netflix does renew, I don't think they will, but it would be a good idea, because then you've got, if you're a wrestling fan, you come to Netflix, except for the ESPN in America for the premium live events and a little bit of SmackDown. But if you're not in the United States, which is the rest of the world, you have all of this stuff already on Netflix. So if you want to be if you're a wrestling fan, you go to Netflix. If you want to watch boxing, the biggest boxing fights, you go to Netflix. If you want to watch the most important football games, you come to Netflix. And I think it's a really good selling point. And we've all been complaining about the pay-per-view model. It made sense when you had UFC charging like $100. I mean, it doesn't make sense for the consumer. Priced me, I'm not a UFC fan really anymore because I couldn't afford to watch the big events. So I was like, all right, whatever, who cares? Now that you're not going to have to pay for the pay-per-views anymore. All you got to do is have a Paramount Plus subscription, and they only increased their price of their subscription by $1. Like, that's consumer friendly. Like, I say what you want about the leadership and whatever, and their potential ties to whomever and what they might try to strong arm certain people because of the federal government ties, whatever. That's neither here nor there. They're making consumer friendly decisions, and I think that's a good sign. Period. End of discussion on that. So if AEW's pay-per-views can then become rolled into whatever streaming service, like you said, we basically all have pretty much all of them, right? And now you've got these bundles where you can get Netflix, Disney, and Hulu or things like that. And it's like, okay, for $12, yeah, you're paying for the ads tier, which a lot of people don't have a problem with. Me, I'm not the biggest fan of commercials, but the reason why they're increasing the prices of the non-ad tiers because they actually don't make as much money on the ad-free tiers as they do when you're paying the ad tier. They'd rather you pay $7.99 and then they get $100 million from the Ozempic commercials that are paying them to be on there versus you just watching it straight through. Now, for me, again, I'm anti-commercial just because if you watch something for an hour and you get 7 minutes of commercials, like for me, I'd rather pay $7 extra to not have my time wasted like that.
Right.
We saw in California recently that there's a lawsuit that streamers are not allowed to increase the volume of their commercials because they know people are getting up and walking away and doing this stuff, and they were illegally well, what turned out, at least in California, which, a little bit different than the rest of the country, but it is deemed that that's illegal to do that to the consumer. I just mute it and then look at the time. The best thing about streaming with ads is you can see how much time you have, right?
Right. Yeah.
Whereas the old TV model, you just kind of had to remember, okay, I probably have about 3 minutes. They're probably going to be back at this time, whatever. AEW, the problem with these big long-term contracts with WWE, and the evidence has shown that their product, you could argue, is lacking because of they don't care about the viewers. Frankly, why would they? They don't get any extra money if 200 million people tune into an event. They don't. They've already gotten their money from Netflix or from ESPN, and I'm sure they want those relationships to continue. So that's why when we start coming up to it's time to renew the contract, that's when the content gets better, because that's when it matters to them more, right? If everybody stopped watching WWE, they're still making all that money from Netflix and ESPN, regardless. So I don't want AEW to become lackadaisical with the content that they're putting out. There's a lot of people out there that argue that their storytelling, things like that, isn't what we want to see for wrestling. And then again, there's a lot of things WWE's doing that people don't want to see either. But it becomes I don't want them to have an excuse to be complacent.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And in the end, when the contract time is up, will also I'll admit, as an AW mark, I do roughly overall do enjoy the shows and all that. There are some things that we mentioned in the review a couple weeks ago, what I would like to not see or what I like to see in 2026. Again, what I would really wish for 2026, that Tony Khan put the brakes on the blood, because we went from blood and guts, then we went to Full Gear, there was blood again, and then now this past week on Dynamite for the women's tag team match, there was blood again, and the main event as well. Well, then again, John Moxley breathes and he bleeds. So that's one thing I hope they put the brakes on. But another thing is that the positive side, I've mentioned the women's tag team division is blooming in AEW. Great. So hopefully in the end, when the contract is up, hopefully Tony Khan does do a good pitch to whoever is the owner of HBO Max. Will HBO Max even still exist? I'm sure it will. That they put up a good fight, and then hopefully Netflix, like you said, does realize, like, okay, WWE is providing us content on Mondays, great, and with their PLEs, we got their audience. Now, if we bring new eyes with AEW, oh, that means possibly more subscriptions, more money, ad revenue, like you said. So in the end, I hope they, again, it always comes down to money. Let's keep it real. It always comes down to the mighty dollar. And I just hope Netflix realizes that, like, regardless of whatever the numbers are for Dynamite, for their PLE, for their pay-per-views, and all that. And again, hopefully, like we said earlier, hopefully HBO Max does come up with a better agreement for AEW's pay-per-view. But unfortunately, AEW relies a lot on that pay-per-view revenue. They don't have, they're not in bet with HBO Max or with Warner Brothers as WWE is with Netflix, to the huge ass money deal that Netflix gave WWE. If AEW could get the same, I'm sure the pay-per-views would be less. They wouldn't be 49.99, I think it is overall. If you go it through HBO Max, it's $10 less. It's the same on Amazon Prime and all that. I'm sure if they had a deal like WWE, but again, all these companies throwing out all these monies, like you said, like why do they have to even put an effort in? We got the check has been cashed. It got deposited. We made our bank. And so Triple H could play it safe. A lot of people complain, like, all right, is it going to be Gunther versus LA Knight to face John Cena in his last match? All right, they went with the obvious choice. A lot of people weren't happy with that. Like, oh, they should have thrown a bone to LA Knight, blah 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 blah, and other things. The hype for WrestlePalooza. It's going to be the game-changing pay-per-view. It's December. I'm still waiting. Where's this game-changing thing? So, like you said, with all this money being thrown around, all these companies, especially wrestling, can just pretty much coast. I just hope that's not the same for Warner Brothers. And yes, you did mention something. Christopher Nolan is against Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers. He released a statement the other day where he is not a happy camper. And I was sitting there going like, wow, if Christopher Nolan, he's got some pull. I mean, he brought this guy back to life with the trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, and for him to be not happy with this deal, it's ruffling some feathers. Again, I saw another report that like was it like 50 allegedly 50 Hollywood actors and actresses have sent a letter to Netflix, or not to Netflix, to Warner Brothers, saying don't do this. They're all anonymous for reasons because they don't want to piss the mighty Netflix off, because some of them have deals with Netflix allegedly. And so it's ruffling feathers and all that. So in the end, I hope the Netflix, if again, that big word, if it is truly that Netflix does win this battle, if they win the bidding war, hopefully they do. Yes, they're going to look at the money, because again, like I said, everything is about money. Hopefully they'll realize, like, all right, we have something great. Like you mentioned, Warner Brothers is over 100 years old. The classics are all in there, all the classic movies, the classic cartoons, all this great stuff that they have. Hopefully Netflix, again, someone has to use logic in there, someone has to use reasoning in those committee meetings, like, all right, we got something really great here, let's use it for the greater good. And again, back to like what could be a positive, maybe we will see Coyote versus Wile E. Coyote versus Acme. When I saw that news, I got excited. I was like, oh, that's cool. Wile E. Coyote in a movie, great. Hopefully someone will be like, hey, I think that Batgirl movie is made, but it's just sitting on a shelf or something, or it's almost done. Hopefully there is a nerd in Netflix going like, hey, we got this Batgirl property here, why don't we push it out and all that. I went crazy when I saw the behind the scene photos of Keaton back in the bat suit. This was after he did the Flash, but he was coming back as Batman in the Batgirl movie, and I'm like, great, more Keaton and all that. But again, got put in the shelf. So I'm just hoping they just use logic, they use reasoning, and think of like, all right, we have this awesome property here. Let's use it for a greater good, and they do use their heads on it. Let it not just become a money thing where it's like it's a cash grab of like, how can we not necessarily exploit it, but like how can we squeeze Warner Brothers for everything they got. In the end, I just hope not necessarily everybody's happy, but I'm just hope that all consumers like us, Joe Schmoes who work 9 to 5, we put our money in our apps where we're happy with what we got. Hopefully in the end we will continue to be happy, but I hope in the end that Warner Brothers doesn't necessarily go away. I just hope Netflix uses it for the greater good. And they realize that some of these, they're thinking right now, as of December 2025, they're thinking of, especially the limited theater run. I hope someone just reels them back in and be like, let's just keep it going as it is. Because like you said, when movies come out, they want to make their money back, because that's the sign of a positive sign. And again, back to the MCU and all that, Endgame made 2 billion in the theater. It's like that's a nice check to receive. So if Netflix sees something from Warner Brothers, where again to the DCU or anything, or for instance Supergirl, or again even the Batman, like, all right, they know these are market machines right here, so let's put it out into theater as long as we can, make their money back, or maybe realize like, oh, there's the positive here. Let's say the movie cost 10 million and they made 40 million. All right, cool. Now let's probably put it back on streaming. And I think of Scarlett Johansson, where yeah, like you said, Disney Plus wanted to put her Black Widow movie immediately in streaming, and she actually sued Disney. And when I was reading that, I could not believe it. Like, wow, she took on the mouse and she won. And they got Black Widow released. I went, and the second I heard, all right, this is release date, I went to go see it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I have some positive, negative things to talk about it, but I was
Sure.
happy that we saw it, because we were. It was all right. Yeah. Well, the only complaint I saw was like, well, she's dead already. Blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, but at least they're bringing her character back. They gave her a nice little solo movie. And say what you will about
Which
the
she
ending. The ending was a little
deserved.
right. Absolutely, she
That yeah.
deserved it. Like, she's an
It
iconic
should have came
character. She
out
was.
earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get why they did it and all that and that. But
hmm
again, it goes back to just the whole like that movie feel experience, where again, I hope it doesn't go away. Like you said, some of the theaters did probably like kick themselves in the butt and all that. But in the end, let that theater experience stay, so people can go out. Again, like I said, the pandemic put everybody back in our homes. It made us Quasimodos in our little watchtowers, and we stood in there, and then it actually had to take something strong for us to get out of there. And I was glad. I can't even remember the first movie I went to go see in the theater, but I was just so happy when I heard, all right, theater. It probably was Black Widow. It's like theaters are now limited open, so you got to get your tickets immediately. And I did. Went to go see Black Widow, and now and then when a movie is interesting to go see, I go see it. But one cool thing about movies theaters that, again, maybe if they don't have exclusive premieres, a lot of theaters are re-releasing movies. So again, the nerd that I am, back in 2015, me and my friend, shout out to Arby, we went to go see the Back to the Future trilogy in 2015. The three movies back to back to back in one sitting, and my bones were hurting by the time the third movie was over. But it was cool to relive those moments. Again, showing my age, back in '97, I saw the Star Wars trilogy re-release in the theater. So if perhaps the premiere goes away, will theaters stay alive by re-releasing movies? I just read they're re-releasing Endgame next year, 1 month. No, it's being released, I think, in September for Doomsday in December. And probably I'm going to be like, you know what? Yeah, let's go see Endgame one more time. I was there again when it debuted. Like I said, I cried with other guys when Tony Stark died. There was a row of guys just crying, all 40-year-old of us crying when we saw Tony dying there. But that is the experience that I love. You go to the theater again, just like wrestling fans, the sane wrestling fans, I might add. When you go to a show and you all get pumped up because you're seeing your favorite wrestlers, here you're seeing your favorite characters on the screen, and to have that moment with others, again, people you have no idea who they are, but to have that awesome experience. But again, it's all under this big two-letter word of if. What if this happens? What if that happens? But like you said, we just have to literally sit down and just wait it off. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, they're saying it's going to take about a year just for it to be agreed upon, and then for it to sign. And then again, we do have that, like you said, that tidbit that I also read, that Paramount is ready to fight it. So maybe in a couple months, again, it's the last month of 2025, maybe come WrestleMania season or WrestleMania time in April, we may read something like maybe Netflix backed out or maybe Paramount did come up. But it is interesting to hear what people's opinions are, because like I said, both you and I, we're both passionate about wrestling, but we're also passionate about movies. And it's interesting to see what is going to happen with this passion that we have. I hate it when people have passion for something and it gets taken away for probably either stupid reasons or non-logical reasons. But you and I, as both movie buffs, it does affect us because we want to keep that feeling that we have. I mean, we have that happiness of going to the theater or talking about movies and all that. One thing about a premiere movie that we spoke about a while ago, but I'm mentioning it here now. We mentioned about we both watched Happy Gilmore 2, and I kind of shared with you, like, even though I did enjoy Happy Gilmore 2, I'm kind of glad I didn't go to the theater to see it, because although it was good, paying the ticket price to see it, I don't know about that. Again, Happy Gilmore 2 was good. I recommend it. If anybody's a fan of Happy Gilmore 1, Happy Gilmore 1 is freaking hilarious. I mean, the 90s was all about Adam Sandler. And to see a sequel, and obviously the wrestling connection, MJF is in it, Becky Lynch is in it. And I think the funniest one of my favorite parts of the movie is when they're in the clubhouse here in Montclair, just a couple minutes from my house, for the record, just throwing that out there. And it's Jack Nicholas with the waiter, and he asks, "What would you like to drink?" And he's like, "I'll take an Arnold Palmer. I'll take a half lemonade, half iced tea." And the waiter's like, "Oh, Arnold Palmer." He's like, "No, it's Jack." I laughed out loud, so loud for that, because I got it. I drink Arnold Palmer's like it's going out of style. So again, that's one example of where a movie I'm kind of glad I didn't go into theater, because again, overall I did enjoy it. To pay whatever, how much, $15 I think it is for a ticket. I'm kind of glad. Like, all right, again, I don't pay for Netflix. Thank you, T-Mobile, for that. So that's just one example. But overall, so your overall thinking, Gino, to put a nice little bow on our awesome topic, your last thoughts about what you feel for this Netflix Warner Brothers merger.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. You said a whole bunch of stuff there that I'll try to address some of it, at the time that we have left. But at the end of the day, things like uh, Happy Gilmore 2, for example, you would have been able to see it on Netflix eventually, right? Maybe they would have made more money by putting it in the theater, even if it was a limited release. That's what Netflix likes to toy with, limited releases, because they're not a movie studio. So again, if they're absorbing Warner Brothers Discovery to have that aspect of their company then be a completely new aspect of their company, then that is a thing that is cause for celebration for me, right? If they're going to absorb Warner Brothers and then every movie that they're made is going to be based on their analytics of this is how you start a movie, there's going to be no originality. We wouldn't have gotten things like Sinners or Weapons or one battle after after another, which all of these are potentially Oscar winning movies and things like that. That would be concerning for me if they just take it and then just going to take all of the content and put it on Netflix. I would love though if HBO and Netflix merged. If they do it like Disney and Hulu, where you can get Disney Plus and you have the option for Hulu, you have the option for ESPN. It's all already included. Like that would be the best way because Max. It used to be just called Max. When they got rid of the HBO branding from HBO Max, it was one of the dumbest decisions ever. So David Zaslav, not every decision he made was a good one. And then they brought it back to HBO Max because HBO is the standard in television entertainment. Apple TV is getting close to that, but it's HBO first. And there's probably going to be a little HBO banner somewhere on Netflix in a year or two where you can access all the HBO content through Netflix. But also if you just want HBO, you can buy the HBO Max package because we got things like multiple Game of Thrones TV shows coming out. We've got Last of Us, which has been amazing. We've got, obviously, you've got your legacy stuff, Sopranos, Entourage, Sex and the City, stuff for everybody. And The Wire, it's all top notch television and all of the IP that they own. Now, theoretically, Netflix is going to own DC Comics, not just the studio, but the comic aspect as well. So they could do whatever they want. And you mentioned Batman, Batgirl,
everything DC. You're correct. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Christopher Nolan. I hated The Dark Knight Rises. So I'm not going to go off on a rant because we could be here all day on that. As far as Batgirl, they already wrote that off as a tax. And from what I understand from hearing from somebody who knows somebody who saw it, said it was so bad it would have damaged Keaton. It would have damaged every actor and actress involved. It would have damaged the creators and the people who made that movie and all that stuff. And everybody got paid for it. Right? Like they get their payment whether or not the movie releases or not. And from what I understand, the movie was trash. And now we're off to this new DCU that has nothing to do with that stuff. Anybody saying that the Netflix would reinstate or the Snyderverse, like please at me at Papa Gino 0017 because I would be happy to educate you on what a foolish, idiotic thing that would be to do and to even think because they already work with Zack Snyder, and he made Rebel Moon Part 1 and Part 2, and those were some of the most dog poop movies ever to be made ever in the history of the world. The first one ends with "We will return," and it doesn't sound like it sounds like a threat, not a promise. And then they do the director's cut. What do you mean a director's cut? He already, that was the director's cut. They're trying to capitalize on this Snyder cut nonsense. And I like Zack Snyder, but those Snyder bro community that are like trying to say that Superman sucked. I mean, teach their own. But if you're just saying that just to hopes of reinstating the stuff, I loved Batman. Ben Affleck as Batman. I loved Henry Cavill as Superman. I loved Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, even though she couldn't really act and whatever. And all of these types of things. I liked all of the movies except for Harley Quinn and Wonder Woman 2. But nobody wanted to see those movies. That's why they were making like $20 million, $125 million throughout their whole theatrical run, which is not good. Now, at the end of the day, I'm looking forward. I'm trying to be positive about this. If Netflix and the things that Ted Sarandos is saying are true, then I have cause to be excited. But he's shown that he'll say something and then renege on his word. And that is a concern for me because he could, once he owns it, he doesn't have to honor anything that he said. He could just absorb it all. HBO could be gone. We lose all that stuff. But again, I'm going to hold out hope that he is acquiring this because, again, the federal government should not be blocking this, even though I disagree with Netflix getting it. Remember, I said at the top, I wanted it to be Apple. They already have a great working relationship. But if Paramount Plus, instead of offering the best bid, like what Netflix did, more than $2 a share, greater than the Paramount Plus offer, if Paramount Plus runs to Daddy POTUS because they're friends and uses, that's technically kind of corruption, but hopefully the federal government understands that this is not a monopoly because Netflix doesn't already operate as a studio. I think Paramount Plus, though they could do great if they had ended up winning the bid for to have the rights to the Warner Brothers deal, it could have been great. But they just already went under a merger with Skydance and the Ellisons buying Paramount Plus. And Paramount, we keep saying Paramount Plus because that's the streamer, but it's Paramount, and they have their own things to worry about. Fixing the Transformers franchise, getting the Ninja Turtles back on track. Like, they have things that they have to worry about more. And you could argue it would have been a little too. They would have bit off more than they could chew with acquiring Warner Brothers. Again, it's not a monopoly. It would have been a monopoly if Disney or Paramount or even NBC Universal, who I would have liked to have seen them get it over Netflix. But I hope that we don't see this type of TV shady business dealings going on. I hope that the government just sees this as it is. The person who paid the most in cash got what. That's the way business is supposed to be done. And as a stockholder, I want the Warner Brothers has a fiduciary responsibility, and fiduciary is to make sure they make the most money for their stockholders, which you could argue is in good spirit, but sometimes that can lead to making poor choices, like whatever you want to argue. Oh, well, we're having to pay this much money. They're raising their prices because they want their stockholders, because every quarter you got to make more and more money, and all of these types of things. At the end of the day, there is some silver linings to the Netflix stuff. I really hope Sarandos and the people at Netflix. I mean, maybe they buy out David Zaslav's contract, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, which would cost him a pretty penny because he's also signed on to 27. But from all the things I'm hearing and reading, Pam Abdi, Mike DeLuca, the co-heads of the movie theater production side of Warner Brothers, are going to stay in there. James Gunn is going to be staying in there as well with Peter Safran. And we just started this thing, so I would like the opportunity to at least see a second movie in here before we completely abandon the new DCU and all these types of things. I love Peacemaker. I love Superman. I love Creature Commandos. A lot of people didn't see that, but it was very fun. So I'm looking forward to what is going to happen positively, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I am concerned about a few things, since Netflix's motto has been movie theaters are for chumps. And we've talked about the prices and stuff like that. But if you get an AMC A-list or a Regal membership, you get to go to the theater for a wicked discounted rate. I can go see an IMAX 3D Avatar for paying no extra money. I can go see 4 movies this week and not pay a single extra dollar, no matter what type of format it is. And I bring in my water bottle and it's empty, and I fill up my water, so I don't got to pay $7 for that. And, maybe the pockets ain't exactly empty because when we're walking in there. So for me, the prices of concessions and stuff isn't a deal breaker for that. But at the end of the day, you make consumer friendly choices. You deserve all the good things in the world. You make things that are penny wise, dollar foolish choices, and you deserve the bad things that happen to you. Thank you so much for allowing me to rant multiple times in this. I've very much appreciated being on and hearing what you've had to say as well. And like you said, this is all speculation from a couple of Joe Bros here on the internet who love movies, who love wrestling, and want to see all of that continue, and the experiential events that movies, that the unique experiential event that doesn't exist anywhere else on the planet in any aspect of entertainment. We want to see that continue, and we just want to be entertained for our dollar.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Gino. And yeah, like you said, it's when a news hits so hard for something passionate as movies, as theater, cartoons, Cartoon Network, even sports and all that, people will go on the internet and rant. But it's just that we're concerned. It's not that we know better. Like I said, you're just a broski from Florida. I'm just a Jersey boy, but we know what we're passionate about. We know what we like, and when not necessarily our hobbies are threatened, it's just when we just hear or see something that triggers something, we will give our opinion. And again, another shout out to Aaron Rift and the NoDQ crew. We're passionate about wrestling. It's not that we know better. It's not we're not we yes, do we fantasy book? Of course, everybody does. But when we're passionate about something and we don't like it, sorry, we're gonna express our opinion. And again, I keep shouting out NoDQ, the review and the predictions. We feel a passion about something, and we just want people to hear what we say. And 9 times out of 10 in the review, we always agree. It's just because we're passionate. And again, we don't know better. We're not promoters. I can't book a match to save my life. No, I'm gonna leave that to the pros. But we know what we like because we've been watching it for a while. I mean, I have that behind me. What does that tell you with me and my passion for wrestling? Your connection to wrestling, for those that don't know, John Cena was Gino's camp counselor. I mean, come on. That's awesome. Again, we'll be praying for you this weekend, Gino, when it's Cena's last match. But again, it's our passion. Our passion is not necessarily threatened, but when we see or hear something that could put a monkey wrench in our passion, we're going to express it out. So I just want to, again, thank you so much, Gino, for coming. If you just want to do your quick plug of where people can find you and your channel.
Sure. I did just want to add one more thing to anybody out there online, whether it's through
Yeah, go
typing
ahead.
or
Go ahead.
talking, that say like we shouldn't be allowed to complain and judge. We should just enjoy the ride that we're being taken on, or whatever, right? Like, especially with regards to wrestling. Like, you're allowed to have your opinions, you're allowed to like something, you're allowed to dislike something, you're allowed to want the stuff that you enjoy to be better. You can be a fan of something, especially sports fans, and they could be trash, and you can be critical, but it's because you love and you want them to be better. Wanting a coach fired, wanting to get a new player, wanting you to spread the ball around, wanting you to push certain wrestlers to the top, wanting certain characters in your favorite TV show to have favorable outcomes. All of that stuff is because you're a fan of something. Being critical of something does not make you any less of a fan. And anybody that says you can't be judgmental of this stuff doesn't understand how art, and I hate to break it to you guys, other than live sports, all television and movies are art, and that makes them subjective. One person can love something, and and another person can hate the same thing, and that is not a problem. That is part of the human experience. So anybody who's telling you, your opinion's not valid, they are invalidating themselves when they do that. But as far as you can find me, Papa Gino 0017 across all the stuff, especially on YouTube. I'm almost at 900 subscribers, and we're working our way up to that big 1K. And you can find me moderating the review on Tuesdays, and then Wednesdays after the pay-per-views, Noah and I break down the predictions. And if you want to get in the predictions league for next year, it's a great time to start when the new year hits, so that way you're have your best chance of winning. Make sure you reach out to us. I know Oofman had a great time doing their predictions this year. I know I did, and then we break them down. So it's a lot of fun, a lot of good content out there. And obviously, thank you so much to Oof for allowing me to be on your channel and to have this conversation. You guys go follow him. He'll tell you where to do that, but he has some great content on there as well. His Gabbin about the Rock, Pat McAfee show situation was great. His talks about Michael Jackson and his top songs were great. And don't forget to hit that like button, guys. It means a lot to the channel.
Yeah, and just to add what Gino said, yeah, there's nothing wrong being a fan and critiquing. However, there is a dark side of being a fan, which will be probably the next subject of my video. For those that may heard of the controversy that happened with AJ Lee and the big event with that one fan, that's not how to act like a fan, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But again, a thousand thank yous to you, Gino. Thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. I hope this is not the last time to collaborate, you and I. Again, with the NoDQ review. Again, shout out to Aaron Riff. Check out his channel, NoDQ, here on YouTube. And again, hope to do this again. And again, we'll see where this happens. Maybe we do a follow-up video in a couple months, or if there's another late breaking news about this. Because again, we're both passionate about not only wrestling and all that, but we're two big movie buffs when it comes to our opinions on movies. So we'll just see how this goes. We're just going to take it one day at a time. I'm not going to hit the panic button just yet until I read or you read something and then we'll be back here on your channel or mine, ranting about it, gabbing about it. But again, Gino, thank you so much for tuning in. For everybody, thank you so much. Please like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can get more videos. And on that, please take care of everybody around you, especially yourself. And of course, everybody have a great day, and God bless you all.